Good morning, Success class. I'm reading from your social studies book, pages 198 through 205. The Rule of Pericles. As the Persian Wars ended, Athens became a powerful and self-confident city-state. From 461 BC to 429 BC, the Athenians, under their new leader Pericles, enjoyed a golden age of prosperity and achievement. Their city-state became the economic and cultural center of Greece. Athens also practiced democratic government. Democracy in Athens. Athenians took great pride in their democratic system. The form of government practiced by the Athenians is called direct democracy. In a direct democracy, all citizens meet to debate and vote on government matters. In a representative democracy, such as the one we have in the United States today, citizens elect a smaller group of people. This group represents them, makes laws, and governs on their behalf. In ancient Athens, direct democracy worked because of its relatively small number of citizens. The assembly consisted of some 43,000 male citizens over the age of 18. Often, however, fewer than 6,000 participated in the meetings, which were held every 10 days. At those meetings, participating citizens passed laws, elected officials, and made policy on war and foreign affairs. The top 10 officials elected each year were known as generals. Pericles in charge. After the Persian Wars, the most important general in Athenian government was Pericles. I hope I said that right. His wise rule guided the city-state for more than 30 years. Pericles made Athens a more democratic city-state. The spelling of that is capital Pericles. So that's what I'm calling, that's what I'm pronouncing as Pericles. He appointed people to positions because of their abilities, not because they were members of a certain social class. Pericles brought more ordinary Athenians into government. As a result, even shopkeepers and laborers could, for the first time, share in the government along with nobles and farmers. Under Pericles' rule, Athens became a center of learning and the arts. The Persians had burned much of the city during the Persian Wars. Under Pericles, Athens was rebuilt. He erected new temples, monuments, and statues throughout the city. Pericles also supported writers, artists, teachers, sculptors, and architects. Philosophers also flourished during the rule of Pericles. Philosophers are thinkers who reflect on the meaning of life. Athens became a great center for knowledge. Pericles called the city the second school of Greece. The second school, Pericles called the city the school of Greece. It's early. Athenian life. At its height in the 1400s BC, Athens was the largest Greek city-state. Its population numbered about 285,000. Of this number, about 150,000 were citizens. I have to watch the time here. It is 7:15 a.m. And good morning to you all. Looking forward to seeing you in school today. Only 43,000 of these citizens, however, were males who had political rights. Athens was home to about 35,000 foreigners and 100,000 enslaved people. And I would also like to just point out that this is not talking about people when, unfortunately, in America, it is often thought of when one mentions slave, individuals of darker complexion. But that is not the case all over the world. There were those individuals that were made slaves of all types of skin colors. So it was not based on your the darkness of your skin or the paleness of your skin. It was just what those that were in charge decided to do. And people are not born slaves, they were made slaves. Okay, back to our reading. Athenian men and women. Athenian men worked as farmers, artisans, and merchants. They often finished their daily work in the morning. They spent afternoons exercising at the gymnasium. In the evening, upperclassmen enjoyed all male gatherings where they ate, drank, and discussed philosophy or politics. Athenian women focused on their homes and families. Girls married at a young age, often in their mid-teens. Their duties centered on having children and taking care of their households. Women of poor families helped with the farm work or sold goods in the local marketplace. Most upper-class women rarely left their houses except to attend funerals and festivals. That's interesting. Even then, they had to be accompanied by a male relative. Imagine that today. Upper-class women generally supervised the servants and spun, dyed, or wove cloth. Athenian women could not attend school, but many learned to read and to play music. However, Athenian society did not consider educated women as equal to men. Imagine that. Women could not participate in political activities or own property. Greek women were always under the care of a male family member. Husbands were responsible for their wives and unmarried daughters. Sons looked after their widowed mothers. A few women had more freedom, especially foreigners who were regarded differently than Athenian-born women. One well-regarded woman was Aspasia, Aspasia. She was known for her intelligence and charm. Aspasia taught public speaking, and her ideas were popular among Athenians. Both Plato, the famous Greek philosopher, and Pericles were influenced by her. I said Pericles, pardon me. What was the role of slavery in Athens? Excuse me. Slavery was common in ancient civilizations. It was often considered to be a normal part of life, even by enslaved people themselves, because it was all they knew, unfortunately. Even in a democracy like Athens, slavery was common, but Athenian households had at least one enslaved person. Wealthy Athenian families often had several. Many enslaved people were prisoners who had been captured in battle. These included both Greeks and non-Greeks. Enslaved men worked on farms, in the shops, or artisans, or at hard labor. Enslaved women were cooks and servants in wealthy homes and sometimes taught upper-class children. The treatment of enslaved people varied. Those who labored in mines often died very young. Slaves who worked as craftspeople, I wish this book read those that were made slaves. Anyway, slaves who worked as craftspeople had easier lives. Sometimes enslaved people could earn money and, in rare cases, buy their freedom. Slavery might have helped Athens develop its prosperous economy. There's always a payoff for those that enslave individuals, or a gain, a benefit for them. The Athenian economy. A few more pages to go. The Athenian economy. Farming was a common occupation among Athenians. Local farmers grew grains, vegetables, and fruits, including grapes and olives, to make wine and olive oil for shipment to foreign markets. Athenian farms lacked sufficient land to grow enough food to support the city-state. Although Athenians grew some grain, they had to import more from other places. Athens built a large fleet of ships to trade with colonies and other city-states in the Mediterranean world. During the 1400s BC, Athens led the Greek world in trade. Important goods made and traded in Athens included pottery and leather products. War between Athens and Sparta. As time passed, the Greek city-states learned that their survival depended on cooperation. Even after the Persian Wars ended, the Persian threat against Greece remained. In 478 BC, Athens joined with other city-states to form a defensive league or protective group to defend its members against the Persians. Because the league at first had its headquarters on the island of Delos, it became known as Delian League. The spelling of that is Delos, but it is pronounced Delos. Athens provided the Delian League with most of its sailors and soldiers, while the other city-states supplied money and ships. During the next several decades, the League drove Persia out of the remaining Greek territories in Anatolia, Anatolia. Anatolia. Free of Persian domination, Greece grew richer through increased, though, let me back up. Free of Persian domination, Greece grew richer through increased overseas trade. Okay, I'm trying to rush because I'm getting a little nervous of the time as school is about to begin. The Athenian Empire. In spite of its successes, the Delian League failed. Athens was the strongest city-state and the largest, and the league's officials and commanders and most of the troops were Athenian. Over time, Athens began to use its influence to control the other member city-states. The League was no longer an alliance of equal city-states fighting Persia. It had become a group of city-states controlled by Athens. Pericles' leadership helped Athens dominate the Delian League. He treated the other city-states like subjects, demanding strict loyalty and regular payments from them. He even insisted that they use Athenian coins and measures. In 454 BC, the Athenians moved to the Delian League's treasury from Delos to Athens. They also sent troops to other Greek city-states to help the common people rebel against the nobles in power. Wars break out. If you hear any noise in the background, that's the students coming down the hallway. Pardon me. War breaks out. As the economic and political power of Athens grew, other city-states, especially Sparta, became alarmed. Politically and socially, Sparta and Athens were quite different. Neither trusted the other. Both wanted to be the major power in the Greek world. Sparta became the leader of an alliance of city-states opposed to Athens. In 433 BC, Athens began interfering with some of the Sparta's allies. These allies pressured Sparta to attack Athens. War broke out in 431 BC and continued until 404 BC. The possibility of future cooperation among the Greek city-states disappeared as a result of this war. Historians call this conflict the Peloponnesian, Peloponnesian, Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War, because Sparta was located in the Peloponnesus. Pericles' funeral oration. During the war's first winter, Athens held a public funeral to honor soldiers who had died in battle. Afterward, the Athenian families gathered to mourn their losses. In a famous speech called the Funeral Oration, Pericles talked about the greatness of Athens and reminded the people that they made their government strong. He reminded them that citizens had to obey the rules in their constitution, their framework of government. They accepted certain duties, such as paying taxes and defending the city. They were also awarded certain rights, such as the ability to vote and run for office. A few more minutes here. And I'm on page 203. I may have to continue this recording later. We'll see. In his speech, Pericles emphasized the democratic way of life is worth protecting. He urged his listeners to have the courage to continue fighting. The ideas Pericles expressed are still valued by citizens of democratic countries today. Why did Athens lose the war? In a battle soon after the war started, Sparta and its allies surrounded Athens. They knew that in an open battle, they could easily defeat the Athenian army. Pericles understood the weakness of the Athenian troops. He chose to keep his army and the people within the walls of the surrounded city. The powerful Athenian navy would bring supplies to the city from its colonies and allies. Sparta lacked a navy and could not stop the Athenian ships. For almost 2 years, Athens remained safe. Then a deadly disease broke out within the overcrowded city's population. More than a third of the people died, including Pericles. During the next 25 years, each side won some victories, but was unable to defeat its opponent. Finally, Sparta made a deal with the Persian Empire. The Spartans agreed to give the Persians some Greek territory in Anatolia. In return, Sparta received enough Persian gold to build its own navy. And this is page 205 I'm about to read. As the war dragged on, Athens fell into a state of unrest. The democracy had been overthrown. The government that replaced it was then overthrown. By the end of 411 BC, democracy had been restored. The war, however, continued. In 405 BC, Sparta's newly built navy destroyed the Athenian fleet. Sparta then placed a blockade around Athens, preventing food and other supplies from entering the city. Starving, the Athenians finally surrendered a year later. The Spartans and their allies then knocked down the city walls. The Athenian Empire collapsed. The effects of the war. The Peloponnesian War brought disaster to the Greek city-states. The governments were left divided and weak. Greek city-states I'm going to read that again. The Peloponnesian War brought disaster to the Greek city-states. The governments were left divided and weak. Many people had died in battle or from disease. Fighting had destroyed farms and left many people with no way to earn a living. As a result, thousands of young Greeks left Greece to join the Persian army. After the conflict, Sparta ruled its newly acquired empire, much as Athens had ruled its empire before. This harsh treatment angered Sparta's former allies. An uneasy political situation developed. During the next 30 years, Sparta tried to put down rebellions and fought Persia again. Finally, in 371 BC, the city-states of Thebes, Thebes, seized Sparta and Finally, in 371 BC, the city-state of Thebes seized Sparta and ended the Spartan Empire. About 10 years later, Thebes also collapsed. As the city-states fought, they failed to notice the growing threat from the kingdom of Macedonia to the north. Macedonia's strength and desire for expansion would eventually cost the Greek city-states their independence. I hope you will take time to listen to this, and perhaps you can listen while you're doing your chores at home or while you're listening with a buddy. But this will satisfy your requirement for reading that is due tomorrow for your social studies class. Thank you. Bye.